Hey guys! Today we'll be recapping a manhwa called The Kind Older Sister Is No More. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, as it really helps our channel grow. Thanks. This story follows a young girl named Irene, whose fiance is stolen by her own sister. At first, they were just spending time together, but then he started visiting her in secret. Even the servants knew about their affair, but they didn't do anything to stop it. This isn't the first time our protagonist's younger sister has stolen the spotlight. Both girls were born on the same day, only 1 year apart. The younger sister, whose name is Riel, was very weak as a child, so everything was adjusted to suit her needs. Irene ended up being neglected. On their shared birthday, her parents paid attention to Riel and completely ignored their eldest child. What kind of parents would be so cruel? But it was mostly Riel's fault, since she knew how to manipulate them. Even at a young age, she pretended to collapse, abruptly ending the birthday celebrations before anyone could remember Irene. Riel is truly evil. Things went on like that for years. 6 years later, Irene finally entered the Royal Academy a year late because she was so busy taking care of her younger sister. For the first time, she made friends of her own. But that joy was short-lived. As soon as Riel found out about them, they stopped hanging out with Irene. She was never quite sure what happened, but it was obviously Riel's doing. Irene had no choice but to put up with it, living her life for her sister's sake. Even after they graduated, she hardly left the house in order to protect Riel. Then one day, she met Boris Gurton at a party. Wait, Boris Gurton? That's the name of her love interest? Okay, honestly, it's a good thing her sister's going to steal him, because that is not the name of a heartthrob. Anyway, Boris was one of the first people to understand her situation and always stood by her side. One day, he asked for her hand in marriage. Irene wasn't exactly head over heels for him, and he didn't come from the best family, but she hoped that by getting married, she could get away from Riel. So she said yes, and they held a hasty engagement ceremony. But as soon as the engagement was announced, he tried to take advantage of her. When she said no, he moved on to Riel, who was only happy to have another weapon to wield against her sister. But Irene had finally had enough. She confronted the two of them and told Riel to never call her sister again, ignoring another one of her feigned collapses. Not exactly an Oscar-winning performance, is it? Irene then took the ring from Boris and ordered him to get out of her house. From then on, she decided to live for herself and herself alone. That's right, girl. I don't know about you guys, but I would have left a long time ago. The first thing she does is order all her possessions to be moved to the 3rd floor. Initially, the butler assumes she will move with Riel, since they've always stayed in adjoining rooms since birth. She quickly corrects his assumption. Riel will stay on the 2nd floor alone from now on. And when the butler asks if her mother has approved this order, she tells him she doesn't need anyone's permission. I am loving this energy from Irene. She's just starting to get acquainted with her new space when suddenly her mother storms in and slaps her. What the heck? It seems Boris, the world's worst fiancé, ran straight to her parents when Riel fainted and told them the whole thing. Now her mother is claiming Irene almost killed her sister. That's a little dramatic, don't you think? Irene argues back that Riel's illness is neither her responsibility nor her fault. Her mother is shocked that she actually stood up for herself, and after hearing how much she has suffered because of her sister, she takes her hand and comforts her. But first, she wants to check on Riel. Any hope that Irene had has now been shattered. It's clear her parents will always put Riel first, no matter the situation. Devastated, she pushes her mother out of her room and falls to the ground sobbing. It's not like she didn't expect that this would happen, but she's still young. You can't blame her for hoping that her parents might finally change. She starts to wonder if the problem is her, if actually she's expecting too much from them. But she's had to make far too many sacrifices already. Like how one time, she was drawing when Riel fell, and from then on, she was never allowed to draw again. Irene knows in her heart she can't keep living like this. She needs to escape this house. The problem is the Chase family are a prestigious and well-known dynasty. Wherever she goes, she'll be captured by her father's men. The only way out is to leave with her parents' consent. So, looks like it's back to plan A, marriage. Though obviously not with Boris. Mainly because I still can't get over that name. Little does Irene know there's a young man in a very similar position at this very moment. His name is Noel Christian, and he's the illegitimate son of Grand Duke Christian. Fortunately for him, both his father and half-brother passed away, leaving him the only successor to the legacy of the Grand Duke. His grandfather refused to accept him as heir, so he gave Noel an impossible condition to prevent him from becoming head of the family. If he wants his father's seat, he has to get married. Doesn't sound too hard, right? Especially when there's a newly single lady from a prosperous family right around the corner. Speaking of Irene, she's just entered her family's meal on her own for the first time, breaking the tradition of accompanying Riel literally everywhere she goes. There's an awkward silence when she arrives, but Irene keeps her calm and sits down. Riel immediately gets up to assure her sister there's no need to apologize for yesterday's incident. But Irene doesn't play along. She sees no need to apologize and calls her out for playing the victim. Her mother is furious, but Irene points out that her sister kissed her fiancé. Surely that's a bigger deal than making her faint. Riel can't wriggle her way out of that one. So instead of denying it, she falls to the floor and starts crying. How predictable. It takes seconds for her parents to come around and start looking after her again. Irene doesn't bother sticking around. She leaves the room and asks her servant to bring all the invitations that she's received. Usually she has to decline any kind of event because of Riel, but now she can't stand being around her family. And besides, how else is she going to find a husband if she hasn't even made her debut in society? Fortunately, there's a dance being held tonight at Duke Jasmine's mansion. Irene decides to attend and sends her maid out for some new dresses. She picks a lovely golden one, and for the first time in her life, she feels pretty. Riel and her father come to see her off in front of the house, surprised at her glamorous appearance. When she hears that Irene is going to a dance, Riel becomes desperate and tries to stop her from attending. Her father holds her back. I guess somewhere deep down he knows that his eldest daughter deserves a chance to shine. And you have to respect her. It takes a lot of guts to walk into a party all alone without knowing a single person. Her arrival is announced to the other guests, who whisper as she walks in. Because she hasn't been to many events, there are lots of rumors about her appearance and personality. But Irene takes them all by surprise with her stunning looks and ladylike attitude. Spotting her walking past, the hostess of the ball, Lady Jabin Jasmine, thanks her for attending and raising the reputation of her little soiree. She asks Irene to join her table, which is a great opportunity for her. The other ladies are all very curious about Irene. She is basically like the Loch Ness Monster, since hardly anyone has seen her. The conversation then moves to one young master Christian who is rumored to be looking for a wife at this banquet. None of the ladies are interested in marrying the illegitimate son, though I have no idea why. He's going to inherit the title and fortune of a very prestigious family, and as the other guests point out, he's a perfect catch. These girls are too stuck up for their own good. Hearing them talking about Noel like this makes Irene sympathetic. People must have spread rumors about her and Riel just like this at all the parties they couldn't attend. Soon the music starts up and the guests begin to waltz. But the festivities are interrupted when two boys on the dance floor cause a scene. One of them, looking very noble and stoic, is Noel Christian, who immediately catches Irene's eye. I mean, of course he does. He's gorgeous! The other boy, who is clearly very drunk, is making fun of him for being an illegitimate child and calling him all kinds of names to try and provoke him. Noel doesn't rise to his taunts and eventually just walks away after staring him down. The other guests watch in fascination. I'm sure that's not going to help his reputation, but at least he didn't get into a fight. Irene is disgusted by the other guests' attitude and steps outside for a breath of fresh air. She spots Noel standing alone in the garden and somehow finds the courage to approach him. Her courage runs out when she stops in front of him, not knowing what to say. Noel thinks she's trying to pass him, so he steps out of the way. Oh no, is there any way to save this? Apparently, yes. In a desperate move, Irene grabs his arm and offers her assistance. Well, that's one way of doing it. Noel looks a bit uncomfortable. First things first, he wants her to let go of his jacket, which is fair enough. Irene apologizes for her abrupt behavior and explains that she heard the rumors about his inheritance condition. It just so happens that she is also looking for someone to take her away from her family. The young Duke Christian is obviously suspicious, as anyone would be. He warns her that the wife of a Grand Duke isn't a position to take lightly, so if it's not out of necessity, he asks if she's looking for love, tilting her chin to look up at him. Irene quickly turns away, making her intentions clear. She doesn't want love, and she doesn't want power. All she needs is a formal marriage contract and the chance to escape her family. Something in her eyes must be convincing, as he seems to believe in her determination. But Noel doesn't know if he can trust her. He has lots of enemies who might cook up a plot just like this one by sending an innocent girl in as a decoy to steal his inheritance. It's only natural if he feels a bit suspicious. Irene introduces herself formally as the first daughter of the Chase family and insists that she's not any kind of spy, nor is she playing around. She encourages him to investigate her all he wants. Noel gives her a funny look, apologizes for disrespecting her, and then walks away. I guess it's up to him now whether he will take a leap of faith or turn her down. Only time will tell. On the way home, Irene spots an interesting building and tells the carriage to halt. She slips on a cloak and steps outside, entering what appears to be a gallery. Since she can't totally rely on a marriage proposal to take her away, she also plans to sell her paintings to earn a bit of cash. But she'll have to do it through a middleman and without the knowledge of her family. She approaches the gallery orchestrator and hands him one of her paintings, asking him to give it a price. It's a piece that's very close to her heart. She worked hard on it from start to finish, always painting in secret whenever she had a rare moment alone. The orchestrator praises the colors, forms, and expression of the painting, which comes as a relief to Irene. He offers her 12 gold tiles and encourages her to return with more in the future. First a proposal and now this? Young Miss Irene is making money moves already. She's not doing too bad for her first steps toward freedom. When she returns home that night, the mansion seems deserted. She's almost made it upstairs when Riel appears from the shadows like some kind of demon. I wouldn't be surprised if she was one. Meanwhile, back at the Christian estate, Noel took Irene at her word and had his servant conduct a thorough investigation into her background. It was difficult to find information on her since she's had a relatively secretive life. Other than the basic details, he only knows that her classmates from the academy don't have a very good impression of her. Uh-oh. Back at the Chase mansion, Riel has all kinds of questions about why she stayed out so late and whether she got any interest from guys. She's clearly just jealous. Irene ignores her and tries to move past her, but Riel catches her arm and says she's changed, asking if this is all because of Boris. She even has the gall to say that Irene should be thanking her for revealing her fiancé's true nature. Talk about delusional! Irene puts her in her place, telling Riel not to use her health as a weapon and claiming that she has nothing to thank her for. Good for you, Irene! The next morning, a letter arrives from Miss Irene with no name indicating who sent it. Riel catches the maid looking at it and takes it herself, promising to hand it to her sister. Yeah, right. The maid is still convinced that Riel is a sweet, innocent little girl, so she agrees. When Riel is alone, she reads the letter with a concerned expression before crumpling it up in her fist. Well, that can't be good. The next day, young Master Christian visits the Chase mansion, where Riel is waiting to greet him with a smile. I think we can all tell what's happening here. Noel has no idea who she is and asks why Irene isn't here to greet him. Riel claims she was busy and introduces herself instead. Noel can't help but think they look totally different considering they're sisters. She also talks a lot more than Irene, which quickly gets on his nerves. After showering him with compliments, Riel invites him inside to meet their parents. Noel follows her with a degree of suspicion. After all, Irene said she wanted to escape this house, so he knows there's a chance she may never have received a letter. Indeed, his hunch is correct. Irene is sitting upstairs in her bedroom wondering why Noel never reached out to contact her again. Hoping there's just been some kind of mix-up, she asks the maid if any letters arrived for her. The maid insists that no letters have been sent, which is a blatant lie. And Irene knows it. She demands the truth until the maid gives in. Downstairs, Noel is being led through the house by Riel, who has explained her medical condition and how difficult her life has been up until now. He's not been persuaded just yet. He's still looking for Irene and doesn't believe all the lies her sister is making up. She's really laying it on thick, trying to make it look like Irene is a social climber who never has time for her poor, frail sister. Which could be further from the truth. Riel disappears for a moment to announce the arrival of the young Duke to her parents, giving Noel a chance to catch a maid and ask her a few questions. And with his good looks, who could say no? A few minutes later, he enters the drawing room to be warmly greeted by the Earl and his wife. He tries to ask about Irene, but even her parents seem to be in on the plot and start talking about Riel instead. Is everyone in this house evil? Why are these people so awful? By this point, Noel is well and truly fed up. He interrupts the Earl, announcing that he already spoke to 5 maids while he was waiting. Sensing danger, Riel tries to tug on his coat, as if that's going to do anything. Noel declares that none of the maids could tell him what Irene likes, where she is, or even if she's eaten yet. So either the Chase family are completely neglecting their eldest daughter, or they never had one to begin with. At that point, Irene has discovered the plan and knows just about every member of the house has conspired against her to make this handsome young duke fall for Riel instead. She's racing furiously through the house to try and find her sister, begging that her last hope hasn't yet been taken away. She arrives to the drawing room just in time to hear Noel defending her. He says her family has been treating her horribly and that their daughter must be miserable to have been treated like an outcast for so long. Furious, he abruptly stands up to leave the room and finds Irene crying outside the door. Finally, they found each other after all! Noel doesn't hesitate. He pulls her into a tight hug and tells her to cry all she wants. From now on, he will never leave her side. Here is the romantic lead we were hoping for, ladies! So long, Boris Gurton, you two-timing loser! To have someone to lean on for the first time who will comfort her when she cries, it's totally new for Irene, who was always told off by her mother for crying when she was young. After a moment, she pulls away, suddenly embarrassed to have hugged him for so long. As if that wasn't bad enough, she also got his clothes all wet with her tears. He doesn't seem to mind, so Irene shows him to her room, apologizing that she wasn't able to meet him when he arrived. But it's kind of good that it happened that way. At least now he knows the conditions she's living in. Maybe now he'll believe that she really does want to get married. Noel assures her things are just the same in his own family. His grandfather, the Grand Duke, despises him, and as a result, all the servants and staff mock him, so he can understand why she wants to leave and promises to help her escape. Well, it's not the most romantic proposal I've ever heard, but at least he's agreed. He tells her to call him Noel from now on and asks for permission to call her Irene. Such a gentleman. After he's returned to the Christian estate, Riel comes sprinting into her sister's quarters. Irene cautions her to take care. If she faints, Irene won't be the one to help her up this time. Riel is furious and has no idea how her sister could have possibly got involved with someone as high status as the Grand Prince. Irene answers her calmly, telling her they're even closer than she thinks. She can keep Boris, that piece of trash, if that's the kind of guy she wants. From now on, Irene has got a real man by her side. Riel acts like a total baby and completely loses her temper. I guess after all these years of being pampered and spoiled, she just can't handle when something doesn't go her way. Their parents walk in next, ready to demand answers from their eldest. But right on time, Riel drops to the ground and instead they order the servants to call a doctor. Okay, I don't want to give her any credit, but did you see that reaction time? She's got that whole fainting act down to a T. Irene gets a stern talking to from her parents, who have no idea what's gotten into her. They accuse Noel of being a bad influence, but Irene sets them straight. The only reason she became like this is because of her parents. Ouch, that's gotta hurt. Her father immediately slaps her, just proving her point. What kind of father can hit his child while claiming he's been a good parent? These guys are just the worst. He looks like he wants to go further, but her mother grabs him and takes him outside to calm down. Once everyone is left, Irene can feel the sting of the slap burning her cheek. But this time, she doesn't feel quite as exhausted as before, because now she has hope. A hope named Noel. However, in the following week, he doesn't contact her once. She wonders if he's encountered some difficulty with his grandfather and wishes she could help him. Then, a maid tells her she's been summoned by her mother. She doesn't explain what for. Apparently, she'll find out when she gets there. Well, that's incredibly vague. Irene steels herself for another scolding. Her mother has always stood with Riel, and this time probably won't be any different. But when she gets downstairs, it's not her mother, but stinky old Boris who is waiting for her. He's got a big smile on his face and greets her with open arms, as if he didn't literally cheat on her with her sister who is standing right next to him. Ugh, these people make me sick. Irene tries to walk away, but Boris catches her and pulls her in for a hug. He clings to her desperately, trying to convince her this is all just a big misunderstanding. Irene kicks him in the shin and he drops to his knees, apologizing for behaving so badly. I don't think begging is going to fix this one, Boris. Haven't you heard? Your fiance is a baddie now. Irene is embarrassed just looking at him. Riel encourages her to reconsider the marriage, but Irene won't budge. She says she has no feelings for him, which isn't surprising. I mean, who would still want him considering how undignified he looks right now? The whole family is shocked, but before they can protest, Noel appears. He's literally our knight in shining armor. Boris doesn't stand a chance against a gentleman like Noel, but he tries anyway. He grabs a fistful of his collar and starts yelling at him, demanding to know what kind of relationship he has with Irene. Noel makes it very clear that their relationship is special. Even an idiot like Boris can tell what he means by that. He flies into a rage, making such a scene that even Irene's mother is a little embarrassed. Maybe now she'll finally understand why her daughter has no interest in her supposed fiancé. Riel tries to calm him down, but Boris knocks her away. He didn't push that hard, but somehow she ends up on the floor, and suddenly the Earl comes rushing in. His wife takes Riel away, and then he turns on the boy. Boris apologizes for causing a scene and tries to explain himself. Apparently, he sent a letter to Irene and never got a reply, so he came in person instead. Well, it looks like letters are going missing again. I wonder who that could be. Noel announces that he has something to tell the Earl and summons Irene to his side. Her father and fiancé are shocked when she takes his hand, but not as shocked as when he announces that Boris has racked up an enormous debt in the name of House Chase. No way! He's been using Irene's name to take out loans? That's despicable, and just when I thought he couldn't get any worse. Now it seems like he only approached her from the start because of her family's fortune, which, let's be honest, is probably the case. Earl Chase is furious and banishes him from the mansion at once, ordering him never to return. Finally! Boris, of course, blames Noel for causing this mess and tries to throw a punch. Luckily, the Christian family butler steps in at the right time to restrain him, and from there, he is dragged away, kicking and screaming in disgrace. What a mess! Now Earl Chase is in an awkward position of being grateful to Noel. If it wasn't for him, their family reputation would have gone down the drain. He sort of mumbles his gratitude and then heads inside while the young couple take a walk around the garden holding hands. He tells her not to be ashamed, none of this is her fault, and he doesn't judge her for her family. Irene is touched and says she also wants to help with his family, but in order to do that, she will have to meet the big bad grandfather we've heard so much about. Later that afternoon, Riel visits her parents in the sitting room to come and comfort them about Irene. I'm not sure why they need comforting when they're the ones causing all the trouble, but I guess even villains need a hug from time to time. Of course, it's not that simple. Riel has another scheme in mind because when does she not? She tells her father that she actually admires Grand Prince Christian and that she confessed it to Irene. That was when she suddenly approached the prince, and that's how they ended up together, she says. Right on cue, she turns on the waterworks and claims that Irene is taking her true love away from her. Oh, come on! How do these people keep falling for this stuff? She's literally smiling behind their backs. 2 weeks pass since Noel's last visit. Irene actually receives a letter for once, stating that a date has been selected for her meeting with Noel's grandparents. He comes to pick her up in a carriage, taking special care to help her up the steps. He informs her that the Grand Duke was told about her arrival, but he never gave an answer. This could get real awkward real quick. They roll up to an incredibly grand estate, which immediately makes Irene intimidated. Noel assures her that his situation really can't get any worse, so she doesn't need to be worried. That's not exactly reassuring, but it works for Irene. She walks in with a smile, where they are greeted by Tam, the Christian family butler. He warns them that the Grand Duke is silent and stoic as usual, but that doesn't faze Irene, who looks like she's about to go to war. Noel jokes that his grandpa won't eat her, which leaves Tam absolutely floored. Apparently, the Grand Prince isn't the type to tell jokes. Or at least he wasn't before. Noel knocks once and enters to find his grandfather sitting facing the window. He completely ignores his grandson and his guest, even when she stammers her way through an introduction. Irene gets a sudden stroke of genius and tells Noel to wait outside. She can handle this by herself. I just hope she knows what she's doing. Irene has to play this just right. She can't be too forward or she'll seem insincere, but acting too nervous won't work either. So she decides to wait him out. But no matter how much time passes, he refuses to turn around. Eventually, Noel knocks at the door, telling her to come back. They can try again tomorrow. Only when the door snaps shut behind them does the old man finally turn. Anyone else get the feeling they're not going to have much luck with him tomorrow either? Either way, she won't be giving up anytime soon. And it's a good thing she's so determined, because the Grand Duke is just the same tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. She comes every day for 2 weeks, and not once does the old man ever turn around. Irene is starting to lose confidence at this point, and I mean, who could blame her? as usual, Noel comes to collect her as she bids the Grand Duke goodbye, promising to return the next day. But this time, the Duke speaks. He tells them not to come again, and even just the sound of his voice makes Noel start to shake. Irene takes his hand and goes directly against the Grand Duke's word, promising to return the next day. Isn't that just going to make him angrier? Well, I guess that's one way of getting a reaction. Before bidding goodbye that evening, Irene agrees to make tomorrow the last time. If nothing happens, then they can give up. When she gets home, she walks in to find the Earl ripping up all her paintings. Okay, seriously, who allowed this man to become a father? He says she's been disrespecting his authority, both by meeting Noel every day and by drawing when she was told not to. He warns her that if she does either again, he won't let it go. Poor Irene is left to sob over her torn paintings all night. The next morning, Noel can tell that something has happened, but she assures him all is fine. Irene walks in alone, as per usual, and tells the Grand Duke that today will be the last time she visits. She was hoping that eventually he would turn around, but now she's getting used to people not caring about her. She confesses that she is exhausted. Even though she was determined, she never expected him to hate Noel this much. Tears are starting to pool in her eyes when finally, the Duke stands up. He turns around, showing her his face for the first time, and asks her not to cry. So he does have a heart after all. This man is far from the Grand Duke that Noel remembers from his childhood. The Grand Duke who lost his temper and refused to accept the illegitimate child his son brought home. Ultimately, it was Noel's father's choice to keep him in the family, so the Grand Duke had no say. But he swore to never call him grandson. He didn't even want to look at him. I'm starting to wonder if there are any good parents in this world. So far, all these people have given their kids is trauma. After Noel's father died, the gap between him and his grandfather only widened. Then Noel's elder brother died, and still he refused to accept him. However, as it turns out, he gave the marital condition not to ruin Noel's life, but to keep him from inheriting a position which would put him in danger from those hungry for the position. When Irene showed up, the Grand Duke was shocked. He thought she was just after Noel's wealth and power, but after her dedication to turn up every day, he realized her intentions were pure. He didn't want to accept her, but hearing her speech about loneliness and ignorance, he couldn't sit still any longer. His conscience wouldn't let him. Noel walks in to find his grandfather and fiancé staring at one another, but something has happened and it's urgent. He pulls her out of the room and apologizes in advance, just in time for his brother to arrive. Wait, I thought his brother was dead. Who is this guy? Noel doesn't want to stand there long enough to make conversation, so he hurries Irene past the man and outside. That guy isn't actually his brother, as it turns out. His name is Count Ascardo Rixus, and he's Noel's cousin. He's therefore also an heir and basically Noel's rival. Since he has pure aristocratic blood, there are plenty of people who support Ascardo over Noel to inherit the position of Grand Duke. Noel didn't tell her because he didn't want her to know the danger of being with him. He apologizes for keeping the truth and for scaring her, but Irene shuts him up at once. Hasn't he realized by now? She's with him until the end, no matter how many enemies threaten them. Aw, she really is cute when she's mad. On the way home, they discuss the next step in their path towards marriage. If Irene wants to truly be free of her family, she will have to formally sever ties with the Earl and renounce all rights to her inheritance as eldest daughter of the Chase family. It sounds scary, and it kind of is, but that's the only way she can make sure they no longer have a hold on her. Luckily, Noel is very practical and assures her that even if they get divorced, he will provide so that she can live a comfortable life without the support of her parents. Irene decides to think over the decision and promises to give him an answer tomorrow. When she walks into the house, she immediately knows something is wrong. The lights are all on and her parents are waiting by the door. Uh-oh, this can't be good. She's bracing for a slap, but her mother suddenly rushes over and hugs her? Have they finally had a change of heart? Of course not. Riel has spun another tale that makes it seem like she's only using Noel for his title, trying to get close to him for the sake of their family. Irene is too tired to fight and tries to go to bed. When she asks her father to move out of her way, he raises his fist to hit her. Thankfully, his wife rushes in and stops him. What I don't understand is how she can still be married to someone so violent. Irene has had enough, and she's not scared of them anymore. She sets everyone straight, telling her family that she is getting married for her own sake and not anyone else's. Her father starts walking towards her. Frightened, Irene backs away and is about to trip on the doorstep when Noel shows up right on time. He stands beside her and accuses the Earl of ignoring his other daughter, only caring about Riel and never being able to see through her lies. Irene is so grateful to him for standing up to her parents that she makes her decision on the spot, right then and there. She declares her intention to marry Noel and to cut all ties with her family. At last! This is going to be a real turning point for our girl. Her parents walk away, furious and disgusted by their eldest child. Riel is left to throw insults at her, claiming that she has abandoned the parents who raised her all these years. Irene fires back that they abandoned her first. Riel then switches to Noel and says if he wants the title so badly, he should marry her instead. Which is crazy, honestly. The Grand Prince says what we're all thinking and tells her he could never marry a liar like Riel. He takes her back to his mansion, where Tam is surprised to see Irene again. He takes Irene up to a guest bedroom, promising to have a permanent room prepared for tomorrow. Irene collapses on the bed the moment he's gone, exhausted from the emotional fatigue of combating her wicked family. The next morning, she is summoned by the Grand Duke, who is for once warm and friendly. Noel explained her situation, which seems to have softened that steely heart of his. He tells her not to worry about him any longer and turns to his grandson. It seems like he's going to say something. Maybe attempt to bridge the gap that has widened like a crack between them for all these years. But then he gives in and changes his mind. I guess that would have been too good to be true. Even so, it's a step in the right direction, and Irene is very grateful that he's decided to accept her, even in the small way that he has shown. After that touching moment, they move on to business, drafting the contract for their marriage agreement. They set some ground rules to establish their relationship. The first is that they have to be married for at least 2 years in order to avoid some suspicion. If they then get a divorce after that time, Noel agrees to send her 500 gold for the next 90 years. Whoa, that's a crazy amount of money! Irene, girl, just shut up and say yes! Those are all of Noel's conditions. Irene has none, so they sign the contract and keep it hidden in the corner of the prince's library. It's sealed tight with 5 different spells and requires a special password chosen by Irene to be opened. The next step is to announce their marriage to wider society. Noel was planning to do it at the 700th anniversary of the Christian dynasty, which is coming up next month. Irene is, understandably, a little overwhelmed at the idea of all those nobles and relatives being present for the announcement, but it's the only way. They probably won't get permission from the Chase family for their marriage, and if Noel's political opponents find out, they will try to stop it. To announce their engagement in such a high-class setting will ensure that word gets out, and after that, no one can stop them. It puts Irene in a dangerous position, but she's not worried. She trusts Noel too much to be scared. At least, that's what she thought. Until that evening when she sits by the window to draw and spots him meeting someone in secret under the moonlight. She can tell by the silvery hair and the frown on his face that he's talking to Ascardo Rixus, that sneaky cousin of his. While trying to listen into their conversation, she drops her sketchbook, which catches Ascardo's attention. He turns around just as she ducks beneath the window. When she peeks over the ledge, both boys have disappeared. But she doesn't want to get caught later when someone finds her sketchbook, so Irene hurries out of her room, opening the door just as Noel was about to knock on it. What is with these two? It's like they have a sixth sense for one another. He hands back the sketchbook and basically tells her that she was incredibly obvious by the window. Both he and Ascardo knew she was watching them. Yeah, that checks out. Irene isn't the most subtle of spies, but Noel's mind is elsewhere. It seems like Ascardo hit him where it hurts during their conversation in the garden, and now he's insecure about their relationship. Irene assures him that she has no plans to run away. She needs him more than he needs her, probably. And besides, she wouldn't want to be with anyone else. Okay, so maybe Irene isn't subtle, but she definitely is smooth. The next morning, Noel can't get her words out of his head. He's still blushing when Tam comes in with the day's paperwork. He also delivers a letter. An invitation has arrived from Duke Jasmine, the family who hosted the ball where he first met Irene. When Irene wakes up the next day, she feels more rested than ever. Now that she's escaped from the evil Chase family, she doesn't have to wake up all the time to check on Riel, so no wonder she's sleeping well. A maid comes to deliver water for her to wash up with on the order of the Viscount. It turns out that Butler Boy isn't a butler at all, but the Grand Prince's secretary, and what's more, he's a Viscount. Viscount Tom Escuan. Irene doesn't know much about the Escuan family, other than that they're filthy rich and very powerful. The maid is about to tell the prince that Irene has woken up, but she decides to go and see him herself. The estate is already full of hustle and bustle. Everyone is gathered around a painting by a famous artist being displayed in the hallway. Her curiosity is piqued, so Irene draws closer to hear the discussion of what seasons the painting is depicting. Irene steps in to help, taking a closer look at the picture. The maid and staff aren't expecting much from a girl without any classical training, but Irene confidently states the exact order the seasons are painted in. She even knows the name of the artist and that the painting was made in memory of a departed lover. That's why the seasons don't seem to follow reality, because the landscape being depicted isn't actually real. You might have guessed, but Irene has totally seen this painting before, once when it appeared in the Chase family mansion. Noel arrives just in time to confirm her theory. The staff look on in shock. They've never seen their grand prince act so soft or sweet as he is in front of Irene. He leads her to a nearby space to talk in private, and even matches his steps to hers so that he doesn't walk too fast. He's too sweet. I can't handle it. They end up in a beautiful greenhouse, completely alone amongst the flowers. He asks her about the painting and if she's interested in art. Of course, she says yes, and he slides over the invitation from Jabin Jasmine. They're organizing an exhibition to support poor artists. He suggests they attend together, blushing a little. He loses his nerve a bit when she doesn't respond, but when Irene suddenly jumps out of her chair and declares that she would really like to go with him, they're literally like high school sweethearts. I can't get over it. The exhibition is in 1 week, so Noel offers to buy her a new gown in preparation. Irene has a look through her closet, but nothing is fit for an exhibition, and this will be her first time attending a public event with him. She needs to look good. So Irene takes a little cash that she earned from selling her painting and heads out to buy one herself. She's just heading out when the Grand Duke catches her in the corridor. He is surprised to see her going out without an escort and offers to accompany her himself. Well, this could get weird, but at least they're getting closer. Meanwhile, Tam is struggling with all the changes Irene's arrival has brought. Ever since she called Noel cute, he's been acting weird. And now the Grand Duke, who wouldn't even look at her for 2 weeks, is requesting a carriage to take her dress shopping. Still, he has one brought around, and a moment later the Grand Duke is helping Irene up the steps, just like his grandson. She explains that she wants to buy a dress for the exhibition, so he drops her off at a big fancy store and heads off to take care of some personal affairs. The shop assistant is very keen to assist her until she hears her budget. She assumes that Irene isn't a wealthy customer and therefore isn't worth her time, so she hands her the book of design options and quickly moves on to her next customers. While Irene is looking at the designs, the other customers look down on her, wondering if she's only from a minor family because she came without an escort. One of them even spills a drink all over her and starts laughing with her boyfriend that it's not a big deal because Irene's dress looks so old. Wow, wait until they find out what family she's from. Irene silently bears the humiliation. The girl mentions she's from the Rose family, who, ironically, recently paid their respects to the Chase family. The mean girl is getting irritated that Irene won't respond, but she doesn't want to reveal her identity. Word would get back to her parents and would just end up being a big mess. So instead, she gets up and walks away, telling the girl not to worry. But she doesn't take that well at all. Feeling disrespected, she grabs Irene and raises her hand, aiming to slap her. This is usually the point at which Noel appears, but today, the job is taken by his grandfather, whose eyes are burning with rage. Everyone in the shop immediately falls silent. They all recognize him, of course, and at first, they are confused as to why the Grand Duke Christian would appear in a random dress shop. He tells the shop assistants to grab a towel for Irene and then turns to the Rose family daughter. The Grand Duke is furious and the mean girl seems absolutely terrified. But instead of letting her get what she deserves, Irene steps in and assures her grandfather that everything is fine. She handles it herself and gives the Rose girl a much-needed lesson in morality. She receives an apology, but it doesn't feel good. I mean, if the Grand Duke hadn't shown up, then she would have just got slapped and had to bear the pain herself. After this whole mess, she has no desire to buy a dress from this store, so they start to leave. The shop assistant tries to stop them, but the Grand Duke makes it clear that they will not be visiting this establishment again. That's not going to be good for business, but more importantly, Irene still doesn't have a dress. The Grand Duke seems very concerned for his future granddaughter-in-law on the carriage ride home. In future, he says, she should always tell him when things like this occur. He hands over a pretty little box with 2 matching rings, one for her and one for Noel. He wanted to do something for them to mark the occasion of their first outing together. But if he gave it to Noel, he doesn't think he would accept it, so he asks Irene to deliver the second ring instead. Irene can't keep quiet. She doesn't know the full story between the Duke and the Prince, but she knows Noel has gone through a lot of heartbreak, and receiving something like this might feel a little painful. Even so, she promises to do her best to convey the Grand Duke's kindness. It's just that Irene knows better than anyone what it's like to have a difficult relationship with a family member. Imagine if your evil stepmother suddenly started giving you gifts once you got a boyfriend. You'd be so confused. Irene just wants to avoid that same emotional distress for Noel. The Duke knows she's right and apologizes for trying to move too fast with Noel. When they arrive back at the estate, she thanks him for his help and company today. She's just heading to bed when she finds a big blue box with a ribbon atop her bed. Inside is a beautiful pale blue dress. It's definitely twice the price she could afford. She tries it on, and the maids say it was left by Noel just before she came in. So Irene grabs the ring box and sprints after him, not bothering to change out of the dress. "Wait, girl! Don't ruin the surprise!" She catches him in the hallway just before his office. The magical moment is broken by the sound of her panting because Bestie literally sprinted halfway across the mansion to find him. She thanks him for the dress, and Noel says it suits her very well. He spots the ring box, and suddenly she gets nervous. What if he gets uncomfortable with the gift and starts avoiding her? Summoning her courage, Irene presents the rings and says the Grand Duke wanted them to wear them to the exhibition. Noel is quiet for a moment, so Irene assures him that they don't have to wear them if he doesn't want to. He asks for her opinion, and she admits that she thinks it would be nice to wear them together. But somehow he gets confused. I guess maybe he thought she bought the rings for them? Anyway, he asks her to put the ring on for him, giving them a chance to get very close indeed. When Irene looks up, they're so close she thinks her heart might implode. Then he asks for her hand and slips her ring on too. Why does it feel like they're getting married? Anyone else? Halfway across town, there's someone else who is also struggling to breathe. It's Riel, who is actually struggling from her illness for once. The maids just aren't as good at handling her the way Irene used to, so she keeps getting frustrated and moody whenever her condition worsens. The maids also miss Irene, which is kind of funny. She was always so calm and mature, and Riel is, well, we all know what Riel is like. While hiding in the shadows, she overhears one of the maids saying that her true personality has finally revealed itself. They wish they could leave too, just like Irene did. Riel suddenly steps into the light, smiling as wide as she possibly can to pretend she didn't hear them. She spots a pile of letters in their hands. They are addressed to Lady Irene, being kept safe until they can be sent on to her. Riel demands they hand them over, but the maid refuses, so she slaps her. Hard. Why does everyone in this manhwa resort to violence at the first sign of trouble? I guess she takes after her father. Like a complete psychopath, Riel then starts acting sweet again, claiming that she's having a hard time because of her sister's absence. The maid has no choice but to hand over the letters, revealing an invitation to Duke Jasmine's mansion for the exhibition. Uh-oh, I think we can all see where this is going. Irene, who has no idea what awaits her at the exhibition, has got all dressed up in her fancy gown, which perfectly complements Noel's outfit. They're the perfect pair. Noel leads her to the carriage with his usual care and attention, but Irene can't quite relax into the atmosphere. This is their first outing together, so she has to hold herself well. Just before their carriage leaves, the Duke spots the ring on Noel's finger. With a warm smile, he tells them to take care and bids them farewell. I think that meant a lot to him. The young couple seem especially sentimental this evening. On the way to the exhibition, they talk about how grateful they are to have one another. If it wasn't for Irene, Noel would have run away by now. Thanks to her, he has the strength to keep going. He suddenly stutters and says he doesn't want to make her feel awkward. But Irene jumps up and assures him she's just as happy. At just that moment, the carriage rolls over a stone and Irene nearly falls. Noel is there in a heartbeat to hold her steady. I think the danger's past, Noel. You can let her go now, buddy. After that, Noel keeps hiding his face in his hands, but Irene is glowing with joy. They soon arrive at the Jasmine mansion, where the lady of the house comes over to welcome them. She seems very excited to have discovered them as a couple, but promises not to make a fuss at the event. Why do I get the sense she's not going to keep that promise? Before they head inside, Noel admits that his eyesight isn't the best and asks her to explain the pieces as they walk around. I wonder if that's the truth or just a very strategic excuse. Irene is true to her word and talks him through the history and inspiration of all the paintings they come across. It gives them the perfect chance to bond, enjoying the chance to spend time together in public. That is, until Riel shows up. As per usual, Riel is very good at playing the role of sweet, innocent sister. She makes a comment about her dress and reaches out for Irene. Before they can touch, Noel grabs her wrist, but that's exactly what she wants. Riel is delighted to have a chance to threaten him, especially with so many people around. His reputation really can't afford any more rumors, and if he's seen being aggressive with a girl who has a health condition… Ugh, I really hate Riel. She's too clever for her own good. Irene doesn't want to cause a scene either, but she also refuses to back down and run away. She asks her sister to step outside so that they can talk in private, leaving Noel inside for a moment. Riel also asks her bodyguards to leave, but they're under strict orders from the Earl to protect her at all costs. Like the maniac she is, Riel grabs one of their swords and holds it against her neck, demanding they get out. She keeps the sword with her and asks if Irene wants her to die. She starts to cry, confessing how exhausted she feels without her old guardian around to take care of her. The servants all look down on her, and her body is so weak. She begs Irene to come back, or else she'll be miserable. Great, so now she's guilt-tripping her. She just gets more and more desperate. Standing her ground, Irene reminds her that she cut ties with the family. She can't be bullied into submission and refuses to return home. Riel throws the sword to the ground, asking why she could be so cocky when she would be dead if not for their family. Wait, what is that supposed to mean? Of course, Riel refuses to elaborate. All she says is that Irene will regret her actions and that Noel will eventually abandon her after she has fulfilled her purpose. Girl, have you seen the way he looks at her? Irene acts like her words don't hurt, but when she walks away, they're still ringing in her head. She returns to the exhibition to hear people gossiping about Noel and claiming no one would marry a guy like him. This is why she has to shake Riel out of her mind. Noel needs her, and more importantly, she needs him. Loud enough for everyone to hear, she calls his name and walks over to him, apologizing for the long wait. She takes him by the arm, hearing whispers spread like wildfire around them. I think if Riel saw them like this, she would faint for real. After their first public appearance as a couple, Noel's enemies are flustered. They want to act out against Irene, but they're worried about getting on the Grand Duke's bad side. By now, everyone knows how much he favors her. They ask Count Escardo for more intel, but he doesn't know much. He didn't realize her relationship with Noel was getting serious, and besides, no one expected the cold Grand Duke Christian to like her so much. It's a big problem for their side. You see, 23 years ago, before Noel and Irene were even born, there was a big uprising and the emperor was dethroned. He was replaced with another man, but that guy is basically just a puppet. In fact, the Christian family is widely regarded to be more powerful than the imperial family. So to be the Grand Duke is to be the most powerful man in the empire. That's why these people are so desperate not to let Noel take the position. While they're conspiring against him, the Christian estate is busy preparing for their 700th anniversary. It's only a week away, so everyone is very stressed. Everyone except Irene, who has all the time in the world and nothing to do with it. She wants to see Noel, but since there are so many people visiting the mansion these days, she decides to take on a disguise as a maid so that no one finds out she's living there. The moment she steps out of her room, she hears some men talking about her. There are already rumors going around that she's staying at the Christian estate, so when she walks out in her maid disguise, they immediately recognize her. They start shouting, trying to get her to turn around, but Irene just keeps walking. Unfortunately, the one who comes to her rescue is Escardo, who keeps up the pretense. He takes her to a secluded spot in the garden and asks if she can do him a favor in return for his help. Irene refuses. Noel's fiancé senses must have been tingling because he arrives a moment later looking mad as heck. He grabs Irene's hand at once and pulls her away from Escardo, asking what business he has with his fiancé. He makes his position very clear to Escardo and walks away, tugging Irene with him. Great. If anyone sees them now, it'll be obvious who she is. Even though he's clearly angry, he holds her hand carefully until they're in a quiet enough space to talk. Noel is frustrated that was Escardo who helped her. It's never good to be in debt to your enemies. He warns her that his cousin is incredibly dangerous and asks her never to get close to him. He can tell she feels guilty and begins to comfort her about the situation. Clearly, he can read her like a book. It makes her nervous, so out of nowhere, she reminds him that their relationship is only based on a contract. Whoa, bestie, what are we doing? Obviously, Noel doesn't like hearing that, but he tries to match her mood and remind himself not to get carried. He brings her to his office to discuss the upcoming anniversary and even makes her coffee. Is that part of the contract too? The plan is to announce their marriage at the banquet and attract as much attention as possible. First, they need the Grand Duke's approval, but Noel feels confident and plans to do it himself. He also decided to change Irene's maid, which she agrees to do without hesitation. As it turns out, this is no ordinary maid. The lady waiting for Irene outside her bedroom is probably the scariest character we've seen so far. Her name is Riel, and despite her terrifying appearance, she's kind of a cutie. She's completely caught off guard because Irene is the first person who hasn't asked about her scar. I guess people in this empire don't know how to mind their own business. The only thing that does pique her interest is that awkward sword strapped to her maid costume. She should probably be wearing armor, but apparently Noel asked her to hide her abilities as much as possible. Her armor is being hidden by her maid uniform, and no one other than Tam and Noel know that she's actually a battle maid. While Irene and Riel are getting acquainted, Noel has acquired a painting that his grandfather was said to like. He's hoping that if he gives the Duke a gift, he might be more inclined to accept the marriage proposal. Here's hoping. Noel feels nervous, even just standing at the door. It brings back a lot of painful memories of being ignored as a child, but this time, his grandfather answers and invites him inside. So guys, what do you think of this story so far? Please subscribe and turn on notifications for updates on this and all our other stories, so you can be the first to find out when they're out. Thank you so much for your support. See you in the next one!